The play action, Bennett looks down the middle, McConkey's wide open, touchdown Dogs!
The Oregon Ducks are here, and this is going to be a team that definitely brings a whole lot of conflict when it comes to the roster and just how everything's going to come together. How good are they going to be? Are they going to be a Pac-12 contender? I think I'm going to be able to answer the question. Hello, my name is Colin Bashnagel. A lot of people also know me as Bash. We are on Loudmouth Sports Network. You can check out Tyler's channel over there, Tyler Isley. Listen, it sounds exactly how it's spelled, or it's spelled exactly how it sounds, rather. Definitely said that backwards. They also have Loudmouth Sports going up. Loudmouth CFB was up earlier today while I was taping the Tennessee video. They talked about the SEC 2024 schedule. Make sure you check that out. And then also Loudmouth Weekly, going to be back talking about every single sport. The U.S. Open just happened. We had hockey and we had basketball just conclude with the NBA and NHL. So make sure you guys check out all the content that they're going to, or all the content they're going over there. So make sure you like and subscribe to this, but also check out what we have, because I guarantee you will have fun listening to what all of us at Loudmouth Sports have. Just give us a little shot. Give us a little college try. That's all I'm going to ask of you. Speaking of college, let's get back to college football. We're going to talk about the Oregon Ducks, and I'm going to start by talking about key departures. Now, what they lost to the NFL draft, it wasn't a ton. There's definitely going to be a little bit of a hole there in Christian Gonzalez leaving. Of course, he was a high draft pick as a cornerback there. You also have edge rusher DJ Johnson leaving that defense, along with longtime captain Noah Sewell, who was kind of a lower pick. And again, just like I talked about with Tennessee's Darnell Wright, hey, as a Bears fan, I'm very happy to get Sewell, especially I think it was a 5th round pick, like I said. Also on that defense, you lost Bennett Williams, which definitely was an interesting loss there. And then you had Jordan Riley leave, along with Malesela Amave Laulu. I'm not sure if I said that right. I definitely butchered that. Not really worried about that. I know who he is. I've never really been able to say his name. Who really cares at that point? TJ Bass, guard, is somebody else you lost, and Alex Forsyth. So 3 offensive linemen, starting offensive linemen, have left the Oregon Ducks program there as far as the key departures go. Now let's talk about who transferred out. This is a long list, guys. This is a really long list, so I will highlight the key names that are going to make an impact somewhere else and maybe leaves a little bit of a hole in the Oregon roster. But overall, there's not that absolute stud that you see leaving this roster. That's a problem. Now, I talked about Dante Thornton, and we're going to start on the offensive side of the ball. I talked about Dante Thornton leaving for Tennessee already in the Tennessee video. If you haven't checked out the Tennessee video, it's the one right before this one. Dante Thornton, he was poised to have a breakout year this year. Seven McGee going to Jackson State. You had Cam McCormick, tight end, going to Miami, and tight end Moliki Mataveo. I think I said that right, or Mataveo. Whatever, going to UCLA. So in conference, I think he's going to play a little bit. I certainly think Cam McCormick's going to make an impact at Miami. And Byron Cardwell, we just talked about a transfer from the Tennessee running back room going to Cal. Cal loading up with Cardwell, who I think is a pretty solid back and definitely is going to touch the field with the Cal Golden Bears, who returns a lot. And like I said, I shouted out Tyler at the beginning of the video. He mentioned it in the Oregon video he did. And by the way, if you want to compare and contrast what he has to say about Oregon, who he thinks is going to break out and how well they're going to do compared to me, I would suggest you do that, okay? It was definitely a good video on his part. Sean Dollars is also another running back who's going off to Nevada. Expect him to play a decent bit. Jay Butterfield, quarterback, left for San Jose State. This is kind of a future play, maybe hoping that he's going to see the field in the future a little bit more than he would at Oregon. You have Ty Simpson there. You have Austin Novosad, who came in there. It's going to be interesting to see if he can hit the field at San Jose State in future years, with Chevin Cordero still there as the returning leading passer of the Mountain West. Offensive tackles that you lost is Bram Walden out to Arizona State and Dawson Jarmil over to NC State, which is a big pickup for Dave Doran and the NC State Wolfpack. On the defensive side of the ball, you lost a good handful of linebackers. Count them. 6 linebackers entered the transfer portal here. Harrison Taggart to BYU, who I think will play immediately. Same with Anthony Jones going to Indiana. I think he's going to play immediately. You also lost Keith Brown to Louisville, Jackson LaDuke to Nevada, Brandon Buckner to Middle Tennessee, and the most notable one, Justin Flo, out to Arizona, a highly touted recruit coming out. And I think that Justin Flo, though he's lost a little bit of value according to On3 and stuff like that, I think he's going to make a big impact at Arizona. And Justin Flo was a good player for Oregon for a bit, and he just kind of fell off. Hopefully he can get things right there with Jed Fish's program. The edge rushers, Traven Ma'e is going out to Baylor to go with Dave Aranda. And speaking of Dave Aranda, his former school, LSU, picked up Braden Swinson, the other edge rusher here, who, is going to struggle to hit some playing time, if you ask me, over there. Defensive line, you have Sir Mel's going to Utah State, who I think will play. And same with Keanu Williams out to UCLA, going to play pretty much immediately. And I think Jaleel Tucker, losing him, a talented young kid in the 2022 class to San Diego State, I think this is a future play for him. I think he's going to play immediately. An immediate play for him, but as well as maybe putting on some film and some tape to get to the next level. I think that's what Jaleel Tucker was doing. So that's all they lost. They lost a ton to the transfer portal, but they didn't necessarily get gutted like I've used the word gutted like South Carolina, or I will use for Arizona State, right? And we've heard a decent bit of Arizona State transfers already. But with that being said, let's talk about the players returning, or really just the players coming in as well. So players on this 2023 roster. We're going to talk about transfers. So I should say guys who transferred in. Let me fix that. I know this is this is a banner that's going to stay. There. Definitely spelled transferring wrong. Oh, well. We're saving it. Okay. Listen, we don't cut out the bloopers here, mainly because I'm trying to get through these videos as fast as I can. And I take big notes here. So that means that I have to take all the time to make sure I get the facts right. And hey, if I have to make live edits and have live bloopers, it's all right. Hopefully you can appreciate that. Work full time. It is what it is. So starting back with the offensive side of the ball, you bring in Gary Bryant Jr. from USC, who I think will play a decent amount, but Tez Johnson and Trayshawn Holden, the Troy and Alabama wide receivers. Now, Tez Johnson, look out for him. He was 800-yard receiver, had 80-plus yard games last year at Troy on a team that was very run heavy. And that's the thing that you have to realize with this Troy team, is they were predicated on ball control, running the ball, and also making sure that you play sound defense. And you saw that on full display if you watched the Cure Bowl against UTSA, probably one of the better bowl games of the bowl season, and it was very defensive oriented. They had UTSA and that entire offense flustered right there in that game. But with that being said, their best receiver, Tez Johnson, is still a really good player, and I think this is a move for Tez Johnson to be able to break out. We'll talk about that wide receiver room a little more in a little bit. Caden Ludwig is a guy from Colorado coming in at tight end. Same with Casey Kelly. You have offensive tackle Johnny Cornelius. Now, personally, if you ask me, I think this was the biggest transfer that Oregon was able to land. Keep in mind, I know he came from Rhode Island and he's not going to pop off the page, but keep in mind, he's got a 95 rating according to On3. And also, Johnny Cornelius was pursued by a lot of other big schools, including my own. Ohio State really wanted a Johnny Cornelius. They ended up going to the second transfer portal window to pick up Joshua Simmons. Where did I get Josiah Williams from? Joshua Simmons. We were able to pick up a tackle, but number one target out of the transfer portal to play immediately at tackle was a Johnny Cornelius, and Oregon took him, and he's a really good player. He's probably the best tackle in the entire portal, but we just don't know it yet because he was playing low-level FCS football at Rhode Island. Interior offensive lineman, you brought in Nishad Strother from ECU, and I think this was a big pickup to pick up Junior Angelau. Okay, I think I got it right that time. Junior Angelau from Texas. So it'll be interesting to see how that offensive line gels when you're bringing in a lot of pieces that weren't there in the first place. But with that being said, you still brought in some talent. And the number one thing you can do is make sure you have more talent on that offensive line than you previously did. On the defensive side, you brought in two safeties in Tysheem Johnson, who really is going to make that shift to corner more than likely from Ole Miss. And then you have Evan Williams from Fresno State. Linebackers Connor Soeli and Justin Jacobs. Now, Justin Jacobs is a very interesting story. Early on in the season for Iowa, he got injured, and it was a season-ending injury, but the year prior, he had a pretty productive year for Iowa in 2021, getting some rotation play with guys like a Jack Campbell, for example. So coming from the Iowa program, he's well coached. I think he's potentially could be poised to be one of the leaders of this defense, filling Noah Sewell's role. Edge rusher, you bring in Jordan Burch. We all know about Jordan Burch. Now, the biggest question I have with Jordan Burch is he hasn't really lived up to the recruiting hype quite yet, but he's still a very young player. How is he going to look? That's my huge question there. Cornerback, you brought in Nico Reed from Colorado, and you brought in Kyrie Jackson, who has a good bit of playing time under his belt from Alabama. So overall, as we look at this current team for the Oregon Ducks, again, bloopers, fixing it, we're all good. Let's get this done, because we're also going through my first couple of videos. So everything is still getting set up and changed around, minor adjustments, but I like the structure I generally have. Talking about this current team. So when you know at quarterback, you have Bo Nix, and backing him up is going to be a third-year player in the system, Ty Thompson, who hasn't gone anywhere. It seems like he's waiting his turn in the system. And then you also have Austin Novosad, who's ready to learn the system and getting in there. Bringing back Bucky Irving and Noah Whittington, who after his transfer year from Western Kentucky was really good. And this was a great 1-2 punch last year, and I think it will be again. Are they playing with maybe a less experienced or a less together offensive line, losing 3 starters? Yes, but this offensive line also has potential to be pretty solid, and we'll talk about that in just a second after we finish the skill position. You have Terrence Ferguson coming back now. Patrick Herbert, not sure how sold I am on him. And then you also have Kenyon Sadiq, who was an athlete out of high school who might end up getting some run. We'll see what ends up happening with that. I don't want to over-project him as a freshman because you just don't know, because we didn't exactly know what role he would have in an offense like Oregon's outside of high school. You bring back Chris Hudson at wide receiver, Troy Franklin, but you also bring in Tez Johnson, as I previously mentioned, and you have Trayshawn Holden. Now, Justice Lowe is there as a second-year player, a guy to watch out for. Kyler Casper is another receiver who's definitely super talented. Are they going to be ready in year 2? That's going to be the big question, because outside of those top 4, and even though I think Trayshawn Holden is decent, he's solid, he definitely wasn't great at Alabama. He and the rest of the receiving corps at Alabama disappointed last year. So how is the depth going to be? Are there going to be any younger players that stand up? Is there going to be a guy like Josh Delgado, who's been in the system a while, that really takes that big leap as an experienced player? There's a little bit of question around this wide receiver room, but I definitely think that they have a good top 2 and a pretty solid third option if Tez Johnson and Trayshawn Holden can pan out. I mean, we know what Trayshawn Holden is. That's not a bad player at all. Talking about on the offensive line, you have a talented kid in Josh Connerly, who's probably going to get the left tackle position. He's still young. He's only a true sophomore from that 2022 class. Is he going to be ready for this left tackle position, or are you going to have to kick a Johnny Cornelius out to that left side? Because I think Johnny Cornelius is very much plug and play, but more as a right tackle. And you have upperclassmen. We talked about Junior Angelau, however you want to say it. He's going to come in. He's going to start immediately at guard. And this is the concern I had. Josh Connerly, he was not a starter last year. He was backing up Amave Leelu, whatever it is. I mean, we know who he is, right? I know who he is. He was left tackle last year. But with that being said, that's a new starter right there. Junior Angelau is a new starter. Angelau is a new starter right there. Jackson Powers Johnson, new starter, backed up Alex Forsyth last year. And then Johnny Cornelius, even though just like Angelau, he's got a little bit of experience under his belt, Angalau. I don't know why I keep saying it Angalu. It's Angalau. Johnny Cornelius with starting experience at Rhode Island. It still needs to gel together. So you're looking at 4 new starters. The only returning starter is right guard Stephen Jones. That is a little bit concerning as far as gelling, but you have a little bit of experience there, and you definitely have talent there with Cornelius, Angalau, and Connerly as talented players. Powers Johnson, maybe my biggest concern at the center spot, but we'll see how that all works out. Talking about the defensive side of the ball here, we talked about that front 7 a little bit in the transfer portal. We talked about Justin Jacobs. We talked about Jordan Birch. Those two, Jordan Birch, more of an edge rusher than anything, and Mateo Uiagalelei is going to back him up. I think he's going to have some rotational value for sure. And I think they have depth of experience, and you have some talented kids below, but the guys like Jake Shipley and Keon Ware-Hudson. But then you also have the starting 3, all seniors, all upperclassmen, Casey Rogers, Taki Tamani, and you also have Brandon Dorless coming back for a senior year. That's going to be a pretty good squad. I'm a little bit concerned about this linebacker position. I just told you about Justin Jacobs. I think at middle linebacker, he's going to be really good. Mace Funa, I think he's going to be really good. How good is Jeffrey Bossa going to play this year is going to be interesting to me. Is Jamal Hill ready to take a step? Is Connor Soeli able to come in and play big-time roles? Because what I'm concerned about with the linebacker spot is depth. Now, if there's one place where you'd like to sacrifice a little bit of depth, it's probably the linebacker spot. Secondary, I think they look pretty solid in the secondary. Now, Evan Williams is a guy who is projected to start immediately, okay? And I think he probably has to at that post safety position, because they don't really have a good answer there. And that's probably the one weakness of this secondary. But you bring back Brian Addison, you bring in Kyrie Jackson, who's likely going to start. But is he going to start, or is Jaleel Florence going to be able to take that reign as a talented second-year player? You also have the other corner in Trequise Bridges coming in as, a little bit more of an experienced player. Dante Manning, 3rd year in the program. And then Tysheem Johnson, transfer I mentioned previous, coming in from Ole Miss. He's projected to play that nickelback position. But like I talked about with Evan Williams, he's the Fresno State transfer, and he played a lot, but how ready is he going to be to play that position? Overall, though, I think this Oregon team definitely has a lot of talent. My concern is, how is this roster going to gel? I do like that they have a super experienced quarterback who I can trust, and I can say that about Bo Nix right now. So let's talk about their breakout players, and I'm popping up the schedule now as we move on to the breakout players. Watch out for Mateo Uiagalelei. Dante Dowell is a running back who could possibly get in there, and I've talked plenty about Tez Johnson, who I think could make some plays on this offense. And then Justin Jacobs, I think, could be the star of this defense, replacing Noah Sewell. All right, with that being said, schedule prediction time. Let's run through it. Portland State, going to be an easy win. Now, they go on the road to Texas Tech, who I think is going to be a really, really good squad. Tyler Shuck, a little bit of a revenge game. When he was hurt last year, they were not as effective, but they definitely have a lot of talent. They have great skill position talent. They're very well coached, and the difference about this Texas Tech team from the Texas Tech teams in the past, they play pretty solid defense. Going on the road, I think they're going to kind of sleepwalk through that game. I'm going with the Texas Tech Red Raiders in that game. It's going to be, a night game. It's in Lubbock. It's a tough place to play, man. And it's an underrated environment for sure. Hawaii, pretty bad. I'm going to give you the dub. And you're playing Colorado at home, though I think they've brought in a lot of talent, and Dion's going to have high expectations. I do not think Colorado, especially with how tough their early season schedule is, I don't think Colorado is going to be ready to compete with Oregon in Autzen Stadium. At Stanford, Stanford's a little bit of a mess. Look, congratulations to Troy Taylor in picking up Elijah Brown, who's a really good quarterback. He's out of Mater Dei. Does not matter this year at all. You have a disaster on your hands at Stanford. Now, Oregon, don't let the same thing happen to you that happened to you 2 years ago when you lost to Tanner McKee in the Stanford Cardinal in overtime, basically costing you a playoff spot. I know later on you choked it away against Utah, getting blown out twice. But, you would have been into that Pac-12 championship at least with a chance to get revenge on Utah, and that would have got you into the playoff. Off the bye, you play at Washington. The issue I have with this game is it's at Washington, number one, which is going to be absolutely hyped for such a rivalry game. And Washington's also off of a bye. And that's a big deal to me. They bring back all these wide receivers. They bring back Michael Penix. They need to get better on defense. And I think that's where I struggled most with this game. And whatever I pick with this schedule, I'm going to stick with, because if I flip-flop and change like I did last year, then it shows a lack of conviction. And I'm going to show conviction, because if I'm wrong, I am glad to say I'm wrong. Most of these videos are supposed to be informative, and I'm just going to give you my opinion as best as I can. My educated opinion says I think Washington's going to win that game. But I'm not going to be surprised if Washington disappoints some people this year, because I'm not sure how good that defense is going to look. I'm not sure how good that offensive line is going to look too. But I have a lot of trust in what Kalen DeBoer is going to be able to bring as an offensive product here with the Washington Huskies. Now, this next one, dangerous sandwich right between Utah and Washington. I think Washington State's really good. However, you beat Utah last year. I think that Utah, not trying to get ahead of myself with the Utah preview, I think Utah might be a little bit of a disappointment this year too. I don't think this is going to be a big-time matchup that Oregon's going to be looking forward to. I think the better team wins that game against Washington State. I think Oregon wins that game, and I think they go on the road to Utah and beat the Utes in Salt Lake City in Rice-Eccles Stadium. I get Cam Rising is back. They lost almost everything on defense. I don't necessarily love their offense. I'm not a huge fan of their wide receiver core. And quite honestly, the only thing that I'm a fan of is that connection from Cam Rising to Brent Keithy. I think they could be pretty solid on offense, and honestly, one of the better top 6 offenses in the Pac-12, so top half of the Pac-12 on offense. That defense has a lot to be desired. Now, this game's in late October, so they could have a lot of issues figured out, but I do expect Utah to drop a couple of early games, and I think that this could be part of those games that Utah drops. Cal could be an interesting team. Again, sandwich between Utah and USC. This is where the really tough schedule really kicks in. And Cal's going to be a lot better than a lot of people think, right? They bring back so much, as Tyler had mentioned in his own Oregon preview. And I think this could be a tough game for Oregon. It's in Autzen, okay? It's Saturday. Don't know when this is going to be played as far as time of day, but I think they get it done because they are the more talented team. They are better. The experience doesn't outweigh it too, because Oregon does have a good bit of experience. They're going to be fired up because they still have a shot at that Pac-12 championship, and they know it, and they're going to be playing USC with a chance to potentially get themselves into that Pac-12 championship mix, and I think they win that game at home in Autzen Stadium. As good as I think Caleb Williams is, okay, we talked about that secondary being one of the better secondaries that could be in the Pac-12. It's not like Washington's going to bring that challenge. I think Utah lost too much to bring that challenge. USC certainly is not there. Name me a better secondary than Oregon's, right? I think Oregon State overall will have a better defense than Oregon, potentially. And I think Washington State with Jake Dickert will be a lot better on defense, or could be better on defense than Oregon. But overall in the Pac-12, I think Oregon's secondary is going to at least be able to hold USC enough, and they're going to be able to score some points with that offense, figuring things out, the offensive line at this point gelling. I think they beat USC. Now, USC preview will come. Don't just jump on me and say, you're just a USC hater. You don't know anything about USC. For all you know, and for all I know, right? Because I haven't done it yet. This is the only loss I have for the USC Trojans. This could be. You don't know that. And if they're 11-1 playing in the Pac-12 championship with a chance to go to the playoff just like last year, are you guys going to call me crazy then? Oregon's a good football team. They've already had 2 losses, 2 disappointing losses. I think that they're going to be up for this game, but they're going to fall asleep for the Sun Devil Stadium game. Look, Arizona State, they are a little bit of a disaster. Let's not forget, though, when they were peak disaster mode last year, they were able to knock off Washington, who would have been in the playoff mix and would have certainly been in the Pac-12 championship playing against USC. if they beat Arizona State. Okay, they only had 2 losses last year. They were 11-2 and only had both of those losses in conference, and they were back-to-back UCLA. They lost to UCLA on a Friday night, and then they lost at Arizona State. This is similar. Just in November, when I think Arizona State's going to be at their best. What are they going to do at quarterback? I don't know. I think they're going to have it figured out by week 12, okay? And I think this Arizona State team under Kenny Dillingham is going to be dangerous on offense. I think that defense is going to be playing better. They got gutted in the transfer portal. I know. It's late in the season. It's in the desert. Oregon historically has struggled there. I have a hunch in this preseason prediction. I could easily change my mind by the time we get to week 12. I mentioned that in a couple videos ago. I think it was the Michigan video about the Penn State game, or maybe it wasn't. I don't remember for sure, but regardless, I think it was actually Georgia, talking about Georgia versus Tennessee. I could very easily see myself flipping my pick right here. But that's a tough road game right there. You come back, revenge on your mind. You beat Jonathan Smith and the Oregon State Beavers, making the Oregon Ducks 9-3, but 7-2 in the Pac-12. So, and we had a handful of 7-2 teams last year. Washington was there 7-2. They felt screwed out of the Pac-12 championship because Utah and Washington did not play. So that is no lock for the Pac-12 championship, but that definitely puts Oregon in the mix. Utah as a 9-3 team, 7-2 in conference, won the Pac-12 championship. Could Oregon do the same? You guys are going to have to subscribe and like and put on your post notifications to be able to see what the Oregon Ducks and how the Pac-12 shape out. But with that being said, guys, like I said, I'm Colin Bashnagel here. Thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Make sure you check out Loudmouth Sports. Make sure you check out my TikTok. And with that being said, thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.